Pride usually mistakes silence for surrender. It hears no challenge, sees no raised fists, and assumes the ground has already been won. That was the mistake Marcus Vale made when he mocked the quiet janitor at Harbor Point Martial Arts, because the man emptying the trash cans and wiping sweat from the mats had once spent 9 years training Navy SEAL recruits to stay alive when technique failed and panic took over. Daniel Mercer was 53 years old, 6 feet tall, and narrow through the waist, with gray beginning to show at his temples. He arrived at the training center every weekday at 5:40 in the morning, 20 minutes before the first instructor unlocked the front doors. The building sat between a tire shop and a closed furniture warehouse on the industrial edge of Virginia Beach. At that hour, the parking lot smelled of wet asphalt, salt from the nearby water, and diesel from delivery trucks moving toward the naval yards. Daniel parked an old blue Ford Ranger beneath a broken security light. He carried a green thermos in one hand and a canvas tool bag in the other. The bag held glass cleaner, spare faucet washers, a voltmeter, 2 screwdrivers, and a roll of black electrical tape. Nothing about it suggested combat. Nothing about Daniel did either, unless someone knew what to notice. The way he checked the reflection in the front door before entering, the way he never stood directly in a doorway, the way he could hear a loose ceiling fan bearing beneath the hum of fluorescent lights, the way his hands remained relaxed even when something crashed behind him. Most people saw an aging custodian with a stiff right knee. They did not see the former Navy training specialist who had spent almost a decade preparing SEAL candidates and other maritime personnel for close-range survival, restraint, water stress, and decision-making under exhaustion. Daniel preferred it that way. He had left government contract work 4 years earlier after his wife, Rebecca, died from an aggressive form of cancer at 48. He had spent 27 years moving between military facilities, training compounds, ships, and rented apartments. After the funeral, he discovered he no longer wanted to sleep in unfamiliar rooms or hear helicopters passing above his roof at night. His daughter Erin lived 12 minutes from Harbor Point with her 8-year-old son Caleb. Daniel took the janitorial job because it gave him steady hours, simple responsibilities, and afternoons free to collect Caleb from school. The pay was $18.75 an hour. It was less than he had earned in a single day as a private instructor. Daniel did not care. He liked work that ended when the floor was clean. Each morning he began with the lobby. He polished the glass display cases containing trophies from regional tournaments. Then he vacuumed the gray carpet beneath framed photographs of students breaking boards, raising medals, and posing beside instructors. At 6:05, he entered the main training hall. The room carried the stale mixture of rubber mats, disinfectant, leather pads, and old sweat. A row of heavy bags hung from steel beams along the west wall. The mirrors on the opposite side stretched nearly 40 feet. Daniel cleaned them with diluted vinegar because the commercial spray left streaks beneath the overhead lights. He worked in sections, moving left to right. No wasted motion. No music. Only the squeak of his shoes and the soft click of the spray bottle. By 6:30, the first students usually arrived for the conditioning class. Office workers, police officers, college students, and parents came through the door holding coffee and gym bags. Most nodded to Daniel. A few knew his name. 1 or 2 occasionally asked him to repair a locker or adjust the thermostat. Caleb attended the children's beginner class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That was the only reason Daniel had applied at Harbor Point. His grandson was small for his age, with dark curls, careful eyes, and a habit of apologizing before asking a question. Since losing his grandmother, Caleb had become even quieter. Erin hoped martial arts would help him feel less afraid of taking up space. Daniel agreed, although he believed confidence could not be shouted into a child. It had to be built slowly, through promises kept, and fear survived. For the first 3 months, Caleb trained under a patient instructor named Sophia Reyes. She was a second-degree black belt who corrected students without humiliating them. When a child struggled, she lowered her voice instead of raising it. Caleb liked her. Then Sophia tore a ligament in her ankle during a weekend tournament. The gym's owner brought in Marcus Vale to cover her classes. Marcus was 36, broad-shouldered, and quick with a smile when parents were watching. He wore a 4th-degree black belt, embroidered with gold lettering. His photograph appeared on the gym's website beside a list of championships, seminar appearances, and security consulting credentials. He had won 3 state-level competitions and 1 national invitational in his weight division. Those victories mattered deeply to him. So did being seen. Marcus drove a black sports sedan he parked across 2 spaces near the entrance. He carried his belt over one shoulder and waited until students were looking before tying it around his waist. His first interaction with Daniel occurred on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Daniel was kneeling beside a leaking drinking fountain when Marcus entered with 2 teenage assistants behind him. Water had pooled beneath the unit, and Daniel had placed a yellow caution sign across the hallway. Marcus stopped. "Can you move that mess before class?" Daniel looked over his shoulder. "I shut off the valve. It'll be dry in 10 minutes. Marcus glanced at the wrench in Daniel's hand. "I asked if you could move it." Daniel studied him for half a second, then returned to the fitting. "Students can use the other hallway." One of the teenagers smirked. Marcus stepped around the caution sign. "You know, in martial arts, when an instructor gives a direction, people respond with respect." Daniel tightened the brass connection. "In plumbing, when a pipe leaks, you fix it before the wall rots." The teenager covered a laugh with a cough. Marcus's expression changed. Only slightly. But Daniel noticed. Marcus leaned closer and read the name stitched onto Daniel's work shirt. "Daniel, right?" "That's right. You might want to remember whose floor this is during class." Daniel opened the valve, watched the connection, and wiped the pipe with a cloth. No leak. Then he stood, folded the caution sign, and walked away. Marcus remained beside the fountain with both assistants watching him. That small moment should have disappeared. Instead, it stayed with Marcus. Arrogant people can tolerate disrespect when it comes from someone they consider powerful. They can explain it as rivalry. What they cannot tolerate is indifference from someone they have already ranked beneath them. 2 days later, Marcus taught Caleb's class for the first time. Daniel finished cleaning the locker rooms early and stood near the back wall with his arms folded loosely. He wore gray work pants and a navy shirt with Harbor Point facilities printed across the chest. 20 children lined up on the mats. Marcus paced in front of them. "Confidence begins with posture," he said. "If you stand weak, people treat you weak." He stopped beside Caleb. Caleb's shoulders were rounded. Marcus tapped 2 fingers against the boy's upper back. "Straighten up," Caleb tried. Marcus tapped again, harder. "I said straight." Daniel watched Caleb's face tighten. The boy lifted his chin. Marcus moved on. For the next 30 minutes, the children practiced footwork. Marcus demanded speed before they understood balance. When they made mistakes, he compared them to one another. "Look at Evan. Evan listens. Maya got it on the first try. Some of you are moving like you're carrying groceries." Parents along the viewing wall laughed politely. Daniel did not. Near the end of class, Marcus divided the children into pairs. Caleb was matched with a taller boy named Nolan, who had trained for 2 years. The drill required one student to step forward, while the other moved back and redirected the arm. Caleb hesitated. Nolan advanced too quickly. Caleb stumbled and fell. A few students laughed. Marcus clapped once. "Up!" Caleb stood. Again. The second attempt ended the same way. Marcus turned toward the parents. "This is why children need pressure. The world won't slow down because someone feels nervous." Daniel pushed away from the wall. "His feet are crossing." Marcus looked at him. The room became quiet. Daniel pointed toward Caleb's stance. "His left foot is moving behind the right. That's why he's losing balance." Marcus smiled. It was the smile he used when he wanted witnesses. "Thanks, Daniel. We'll call you when we need expert janitorial analysis." A few parents laughed again. Caleb looked down. Daniel ignored Marcus and spoke to his grandson. "Caleb, move the back foot first. Just 6 inches." Marcus raised a hand. "Do not coach from the side." Daniel kept his eyes on Caleb. 6 inches. Caleb moved his back foot, then his front. Nolan stepped forward. Caleb remained upright. The room went still for a different reason. Marcus crossed his arms. "Congratulations." He walked backward. Daniel nodded once. That was the drill. Marcus's assistants laughed, but neither sounded comfortable. Class ended 4 minutes later. Caleb ran to the locker room without speaking. Daniel waited outside until the boy emerged carrying his shoes. "You did fine," Daniel said. Caleb stared at the floor. "Mr. Vale thinks I'm weak." Daniel crouched so they were at eye level. "Do you think you're weak?" Caleb shrugged. "That isn't an answer. I don't know. Daniel looked through the glass doors toward the training hall. Marcus stood among several parents, smiling and demonstrating a fast combination with his hands. Then we'll find out, Daniel said. He did not complain to Aaron. He did not speak to the owner. He did not threaten to remove Caleb from the program. He wanted to see whether Marcus had made a poor decision or revealed a pattern. There was a difference. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern became clear. Marcus singled out hesitant students because they made his corrections look dramatic. He called embarrassment motivation. He treated fear as disobedience. When parents watched closely, he softened. When they looked at their phones, he changed. Daniel noticed because observing people had once been part of his profession. At a coastal training facility years earlier, he had taught recruits that exhaustion did not create character. It exposed habits. A man who became careless under pressure had always been careless. Pressure merely removed the disguise. Marcus did not know he was being assessed. He only knew the janitor kept appearing at the edge of his classes. The provocations began small. Marcus left used towels on the floor beside Daniel's cleaning cart. He ordered students to run through a hallway Daniel had just mopped. He struck the heavy bags while Daniel was adjusting their chains. "Careful," Daniel said once. "That hook isn't seated." Marcus hit the bag again. "You worried it'll fall?" "Yes. Maybe stand farther back." Daniel reached up, twisted the open hook toward Marcus, and showed him the gap. "If it drops, it'll break someone's foot." Marcus stared at the hook, then at Daniel. "You always have something to say. Only when something's unsafe." Marcus stepped closer. The heavy bag swung gently between them. "You ever trained before?" "A little." "What kind?" "Different kinds." Marcus smiled. "That usually means none." Daniel secured the hook with a wrench. "That could be." Marcus began mentioning the janitor during class. "If your hands drop, even Daniel might catch you." "Keep moving!" "Don't make the cleaning crew scrape you off the mat." One evening, he held up a wooden practice knife and asked the adult class what they would do if attacked in a parking garage. A student offered an answer. Marcus shook his head. "Wrong. You control the weapon arm and dominate immediately. Hesitation gets you killed." Daniel was replacing batteries in the wall clock. Marcus pointed the practice knife toward him. "What would you do, Daniel?" Daniel slid the battery cover into place. "Depends. On what? Distance. Exit. Other people. Whether he wants my wallet or my life." Marcus laughed. "That's not an answer. It's the only honest one." The class stopped shifting. Marcus spun the wooden knife in his palm. "All right. Someone puts this to your stomach. What do you do?" "Give him my wallet." Several students laughed. Marcus did too. There you have it. The janitor's defense system. Daniel climbed down from the stepladder. "If he only wants $23 and an expired grocery coupon, I'd say the system worked." This time the students laughed louder. Marcus did not. Daniel folded the ladder and carried it out. He had no interest in winning the exchange, but Marcus experienced it as a defeat. The complication arrived on a Thursday in November, when Harbor Point prepared for its annual scholarship demonstration. The event was important to the gym. Local businesses sponsored memberships for children whose families could not afford tuition. A regional sports reporter planned to attend, along with nearly 80 parents and guests. Marcus had been chosen to lead the demonstration. He treated it like an audition. For 6 days, he rehearsed advanced students through board breaks, synchronized forms, and controlled sparring sequences. He demanded precise timing. He adjusted the lighting. He repositioned chairs. He ordered Daniel to polish the mat edges twice because they looked dull in photographs. Caleb had been selected for a beginner demonstration with 5 other children. He was supposed to perform a simple escape from a wrist grab. Daniel practiced with him at home using almost no force. "Do not fight the hand," Daniel said. "Turn toward the thumb. That is the opening." Caleb practiced until he could do it without looking. On the afternoon before the event, Marcus changed the routine. He decided each beginner would demonstrate against one of the teenage assistants instead of another child. He said the size difference would impress the audience. Caleb froze when he heard. His assigned partner was 17-year-old Tyler Crane, who weighed almost 170 pounds. "It's controlled," Marcus said. "Nobody's getting hurt." Daniel stood beside the storage closet, holding a box of folded programs. He watched Tyler practice with another child. The teenager gripped too tightly. Tyler, Daniel said. Ease up on the wrist. Marcus turned. I'm running rehearsal. He's squeezing. He's giving resistance. The children weren't taught against resistance. Marcus walked across the mat. Daniel, clean the lobby. Daniel set down the box. Caleb doesn't need to do this version. Marcus looked toward the viewing area. 3 parents and the sports reporter were watching rehearsal. His smile returned. Are you speaking as an employee or as an overprotective grandfather? As his grandfather. Then you should let him learn that nerves don't control the world. Daniel glanced at Caleb. The boy's breathing had become shallow. This isn't nerves. You changed the drill after they learned it. Marcus lowered his voice. You clean this facility. I teach here. That doesn't make the drill safe. The reporter looked up from her notebook. Marcus noticed. He raised his voice. Everyone take 5. Students moved toward the water fountain. Marcus stepped closer to Daniel. Every time I teach, you stand there judging. I stand there because my grandson is there. You correct me in front of students. When it concerns safety. You think because you've watched a few classes you understand fighting? Daniel's face remained still. No. Marcus waited. Daniel added nothing. That quietness irritated him more than an insult would have. Tomorrow, Marcus said, you stay off the training floor. You do your job and let me do mine. Daniel picked up the box. Caleb uses a child partner, or he doesn't participate. Marcus leaned close enough for Daniel to smell peppermint gum. You don't give me conditions. Daniel met his eyes. I just did. That evening, Marcus called Erin. He told her Daniel was interfering with Caleb's development. He said the boy had potential, but his grandfather's fear was teaching him to avoid challenges. Erin listened for 12 minutes. Then she called Daniel. Did you tell Marcus that Caleb couldn't do the demonstration? I told him Caleb could do the version he practiced. He says you embarrassed him in front of a reporter. Daniel sat at his kitchen table, a bowl of soup cooling beside him. I corrected a safety issue. Erin sighed. You always say things like that. Like what? Like you're filing a report. He's trying to teach confidence. Humiliation isn't confidence. He says Caleb needs to be pushed. He needs to be prepared. There was a silence. Erin had grown up with Daniel's absences, his locked cases, his sudden deployments, and his refusal to explain where he had been. She respected his judgment, but part of her still associated his calm voice with decisions already made. Dad, I don't want Caleb caught between you and this instructor. Neither do I. Then please don't turn tomorrow into something. Daniel looked at Rebecca's photograph on the shelf. I won't. The next evening, the parking lot filled before 6. Parents entered carrying coats, cameras, and paper cups. Children in white uniforms gathered near the locker rooms. A folding table in the lobby held scholarship brochures and donation forms. Daniel arrived early. He wore his usual gray work pants and navy shirt. He checked the exits, tightened 3 loose chairs, taped down an electrical cord, and placed extra paper towels in both restrooms. At 5:47, he found Caleb sitting alone on a bench. The boy's belt lay untied across his lap. You want help? Daniel asked. Caleb nodded. Daniel tied the belt carefully. Mom says I should do the big version. Daniel sat beside him. What do you say? I don't want Mr. Vale mad. That isn't what I asked. Caleb rubbed his thumb against the belt knot. I want to do the one we practiced. Then that's the one you do. What if he says no? Then you bow, step off the mat, and come sit with me. Caleb looked up. Won't everyone think I quit? Some might. Is quitting bad? Sometimes. Other times, refusing the wrong thing is the bravest choice available. At 6 o'clock, the demonstration began. Marcus moved through the center of the floor with a wireless microphone clipped to his collar. He introduced the gym's history, thanked sponsors, and spoke about discipline. Applause followed each sequence. Boards cracked. Students shouted. Cameras flashed. Daniel remained near the rear exit beside his cleaning cart. 28 minutes into the program, Marcus called the beginner group forward. Caleb lined up with the others. Tyler and the teenage assistants stepped onto the mat. Daniel watched Marcus position Tyler in front of Caleb. Caleb looked toward the back of the room. Daniel shook his head once. Small movement, clear meaning. Caleb raised his hand. Marcus ignored it. Attackers rarely match our size, Marcus announced. Tonight, these students will show that proper technique overcomes physical disadvantage. Tyler reached for Caleb's wrist. Caleb stepped back. Marcus covered the microphone with one hand. "What are you doing?" "I practiced with Nolan." "You'll be fine." Caleb looked at Daniel again. Daniel did not move. The choice had to belong to the boy. Caleb bowed. Then he stepped off the mat. Whispers moved through the audience. Marcus's face hardened. "Caleb," he said into the microphone, "come back to your position." Caleb walked toward Daniel. Erin rose from her chair. "Caleb?" The boy stopped between them, trapped by 3 adult expectations. Marcus smiled toward the audience. "It appears we have a case of stage fright." A few people chuckled. Daniel saw Caleb's ears turn red. Marcus continued. "This is an important lesson. Fear grows when adults reward avoidance." Daniel left the cleaning cart. He walked onto the edge of the mat. "Leave him out of your speech." The microphone carried Marcus's reply across the room. "This is my floor." Daniel's shoes stopped at the boundary line. "No. It's a rented room with children in it." The audience became silent. Marcus removed the microphone and handed it to an assistant. The reporter lifted her phone. Erin moved toward Daniel. "Dad, please." Daniel looked at her. "I'm not going to fight him." Marcus heard. He laughed once. "Fight me." Daniel turned back. "I said I wasn't going to." Marcus walked closer. "You've been undermining me for weeks, giving advice, correcting drills, acting like you know what real training looks like." Daniel glanced toward the children. "This isn't the place." Marcus spread his hands toward the audience. "You made it the place." "No, you did, when you used an 8-year-old to protect your pride." The words landed harder than shouting. Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at the parents, the reporter, the sponsors, and the owner standing beside the front desk. Everything he believed he had to lose was now watching. His authority, his reputation, his image of control. He pointed toward the center of the mat. "Come show us then." Daniel did not move. "Show you what?" "All that expert knowledge." "I never claimed to be an expert. You always have an answer." "I ask questions." Marcus picked up the wooden practice knife from the demonstration table. The room shifted. The gym owner stepped forward. "Marcus, stop." Marcus held up a hand. "It's rubber." It was not rubber. It was hardwood, rounded at the tip but solid through the handle. He tossed it toward Daniel. Daniel caught it without looking down. Marcus froze for half a second. The catch had been casual. Not fast enough to impress a crowd. Efficient enough to bother a trained eye. Daniel examined the practice weapon. "This has a split near the handle." Marcus scoffed. "Of course it does." Daniel walked to the demonstration table, placed the knife down, and selected a foam trainer instead. "If you're demonstrating for children, use this." Marcus followed him. "You think changing the knife makes you qualified?" "No." "What rank are you?" "None that matters here." "What belt?" "Black leather." "Holds up my pants." A few parents laughed. Marcus heard them. That was the final push. He grabbed Daniel's right wrist. The movement was sudden, but not yet a strike. Daniel looked down at the hand. "Let go!" Marcus tightened his grip. "Show Caleb how easy it is." Daniel's voice remained quiet. "Marcus." "What?" "You are holding the wrong wrist." Marcus frowned. Daniel moved once. There was no kick, no punch, and no dramatic shout. He turned his hand, stepped at an angle, and Marcus's posture folded toward the mat as if a supporting cable had been cut. Daniel did not throw him. He guided him down. Marcus ended on one knee with his own wrist controlled against his chest. The entire exchange lasted less than 2 seconds. Daniel released him immediately and stepped back. No celebration, no pose, only distance. Marcus rose with his face burning. He swung. Daniel slipped outside the punch, placed one hand against Marcus's shoulder, and redirected him past. Marcus stumbled 3 steps and stopped himself before reaching the chairs. Daniel's right leg did not move normally. The stiffness Caleb had noticed for years was suddenly obvious, not as weakness, but as limitation managed with exact economy. Marcus turned again. The gym owner stepped between them. "That's enough." Marcus pointed around him. "He attacked me." "No," said a voice near the front row. "You grabbed him first." The speaker was a broad man in his late 40s, wearing a dark wool coat. Daniel had noticed him earlier because he watched exits more than demonstrations. The man stood. His name was Thomas Greer, a retired Navy chief who owned a marine electronics company sponsoring 2 scholarships. He stared at Daniel. "Mercer?" Daniel's expression changed for the first time. Not fear. Recognition. Tom. Greer walked closer. I thought that was you. Marcus looked between them. You know him? Greer laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. Know him? This man trained recruits who thought they were indestructible until he put them in cold water and took away every comfortable option. Daniel lowered his voice. Tom. But Greer had already understood the situation. He turned toward the crowd. Daniel Mercer spent 9 years instructing Navy SEAL recruits and maritime special operations candidates. Close-range survival, water stress, restraint, field decision-making. He taught people how to function when strength stopped being enough. No one spoke. Greer looked at Marcus. He never cared about belts. Marcus's chest rose and fell beneath his uniform. That doesn't mean he can teach martial arts, Daniel answered before Greer could. You're right. Marcus blinked. Daniel continued. Military training does not automatically make someone a good civilian instructor. Competition skill doesn't automatically make someone a bad one. The statement removed the argument Marcus had prepared. Daniel stepped toward the beginner group. But a good instructor does not change a child's drill in front of a crowd, add 50 pounds of resistance, then shame him for objecting. Marcus looked toward the gym owner. I was building confidence. No, Daniel said. You were building a moment where you looked important. The room remained silent. Daniel picked up the foam practice knife and held it loosely. You want to teach them something useful? Marcus said nothing. Daniel addressed the children. Everybody step off the mat except Tyler. The gym owner hesitated, then nodded. The children moved toward the edge. Daniel handed the foam knife to Tyler. Stand 10 feet away. Tyler obeyed. Daniel turned to Caleb. Come here. Caleb walked onto the mat. Erin's hand rose to her mouth. Daniel crouched beside his grandson. What should you do if someone has a knife, and there's an open door behind you? Caleb looked toward the exit. Run? Yes. Daniel stood and pointed. Go. Caleb ran through the open doorway into the lobby. Several adults laughed, not at him, but with relief. Daniel looked around the room. That is the first technique, he called Caleb back. Then he moved a padded chair between Caleb and Tyler. If you cannot leave, put something between you and the weapon. Caleb gripped the chair. Daniel nodded toward Tyler. Walk forward slowly. Tyler advanced. Caleb moved backward, keeping the chair between them. Daniel stopped the drill. That is the second technique. He took the foam knife and placed it on the floor. The last option is close contact. It is dangerous, ugly, and uncertain. Anyone promising a perfect answer is selling confidence they cannot guarantee. The reporter lowered her phone and began writing. Daniel faced Marcus. Training should make people harder to harm, not easier to control. Marcus stood alone near the center of the mat. The gold letters on his belt caught the overhead lights. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he untied the belt. Everyone watched him. He did not apologize. Not then. He walked into the office and closed the door. The demonstration ended early. Parents gathered their coats. Sponsors spoke quietly with the owner. Children clustered around Caleb and asked whether he had known his grandfather trained Navy SEAL recruits. Caleb looked toward Daniel before answering. Daniel shook his head. Not exactly, Caleb said. It was true. Daniel had never told him much. On the drive home, rain tapped against the Ranger's windshield. Caleb sat in the passenger seat holding a paper cup of hot chocolate between both hands. Did you teach SEALs to fight? Sometimes. Were you a SEAL? No. Were you better than them? Daniel adjusted the heater. No, but you trained them. I helped with specific problems. Mr. Greer said they thought they were indestructible. Most young men think that for a while. Did you? Daniel smiled. For too long. They stopped at a red light. Caleb studied him. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because it wasn't important to my job. It was important tonight. No. What mattered tonight was that you stepped off the mat. Caleb looked out the window. I was scared. Courage requires that. The following Monday, Daniel arrived at Harbor Point at 5:40 as usual. Marcus's sports sedan was not in the parking lot. Inside, the lights above the front desk were already on. The gym owner, Paul Hendricks, waited with 2 coffees. Daniel unlocked the supply closet. Paul held out 1 cup. I owe you an apology. Daniel took the coffee. You didn't grab my wrist. I let things go too far. Yes. Paul winced at the plainness of the answer. Marcus is suspended while we review complaints. 3 parents contacted me after the event. Sophia will return in 2 weeks, and I've hired another instructor until then. Daniel nodded. Paul shifted his weight. I also want to offer you a position. No, you don't know what it is. Yes, I do. Safety consultant. A few hours a week. Review drills and instructor procedures. Daniel opened the supply closet. I clean the building. You could do both. I don't want to. Paul looked disappointed. Daniel placed his thermos on the shelf. Write clear limits for children's drills. Require instructors to demonstrate modifications before using them. Give parents a complaint process that doesn't go through the instructor. Paul pulled out his phone and began taking notes. Daniel continued. And replace the wooden training knives. 2 are cracked. Paul stopped typing. You really notice everything, don't you? No. Daniel picked up his mop. Just the things that can hurt someone. Marcus returned 3 weeks later. He entered during a quiet afternoon when Daniel was cleaning the mirrors. He wore jeans and a gray jacket, not his uniform. His belt was nowhere in sight. Daniel saw him in the reflection, but kept wiping the glass. Marcus stopped 10 feet behind him. My suspension is over. Daniel moved the cloth in slow circles. I heard. I'm not teaching children anymore. Daniel said nothing. Marcus placed his hands in his pockets. I watched the recording. Daniel sprayed the next section. So did half the city. My brother sent it to me. That sounds unpleasant. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. I looked ridiculous. You were angry. I was humiliated. Daniel folded the cloth. Those aren't the same. Marcus looked toward the empty mat. I've spent 22 years training. That's a long time. You made me look like I knew nothing. Daniel turned. I moved twice. Marcus's face tightened, but the anger did not return. That's what I mean. Daniel leaned against the cleaning cart. You know plenty. That was the problem. Marcus waited. You knew how to win a match, Daniel said. You knew how to control a class. You knew how to make people watch you. Somewhere along the way, you started treating all 3 as the same skill. Marcus looked down. What would you have done if I hadn't stopped? You did stop. What if I hadn't? Daniel considered the question. I would have kept you from hurting me. That's it? That's enough. Marcus stared at the mats for several seconds. I'm teaching adults on probation. Paul says someone has to observe my classes. Daniel lifted the spray bottle. Sounds reasonable. He asked Sophia. She's good. Marcus turned toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Your grandson has better balance. Daniel looked at his reflection in the mirror. He practices. Marcus nodded. Then he left. There was no friendship between them after that. No dramatic reconciliation. Marcus remained proud, impatient, and occasionally too sharp with students. But he began pausing before corrections. He stopped using embarrassment as entertainment. When someone hesitated, he asked why before accusing them of fear. Months later, Daniel watched him teach a new adult student who froze during a drill. The old Marcus would have mocked the man. Instead, Marcus lowered his hands and said, "Let's slow it down." Daniel returned to his mop before Marcus could notice him watching. Caleb continued training. By spring, he no longer stood with rounded shoulders. He was still small for his age, still careful, still more comfortable listening than speaking. Daniel never tried to change those things. On the night Caleb earned his first colored belt, he ran across the lobby and handed it to his grandfather. Daniel examined the stitching. You worked hard. Caleb grinned. Mr. Vale said my timing was good. Was it? Yes. Then he was right. They left the gym together beneath a warm rain. Daniel locked the supply closet, turned off the hallway lights, and checked the repaired drinking fountain before walking outside. The building settled into darkness behind them. Pride had once looked at Daniel's mop, his faded shirt, and his quiet manner, and decided it understood him. But quiet strength does not disappear when nobody applauds it. It simply returns to its work, certain of what it can do, and disciplined enough not to prove it without reason. If Daniel's restraint earned your respect, subscribe and leave a like for more stories about people whose strength is easy to overlook. Share this with someone who believes the best teachers protect their students instead of humiliating them. And tell us in the comments, did Caleb show more courage by stepping off the mat, or by returning to demonstrate the safer lesson?